Okay. Good evening, everybody, and I want to welcome each and every one of us to this evening. It promises to be a very, very exciting evening today. Um, I am really pushed up for what we are going to learn. Very interesting topic that we have before us today, driving collaboration in the multi-generational workforce. And um, just a moment. All right, I'm sure you can all see my screen now. So we have a very interesting topic today, and we have the delectable Charles Ume with us on this topic today. And very briefly, I'll be telling you who Charles Ume is. For some people that never understood my excitement when I kept saying you don't want to miss this session today, let me give you a brief on who Charles Ume is. So Charles Ume is your visionary thought leader. He's dedicated to fostering intergenerational collaboration and driving meaningful change. With a compelling vision and a wealth of expertise, Charles is poised to guide professionals and next generation voices towards success in an ever-evolving world. His journey is marked by profound insights shared through his influential works like Breaking the Coconut, Cycles. He has co-authored Cycles with other global thought leaders, and his latest masterpiece is Redefining Talents. Through these publications, Charles empowers individuals to embrace essential human skills crucial in the post-COVID era, where genuine connections are paramount. Charles also helps thought leaders publish works on business and family history. Charles believes in a future where every generation contributes to the growth and innovation of the next, with a keen focus on co-creating magic and empowering individuals to excel. Take note of that. He's keen on co-creating magic and empowering individuals to excel. Charles is dedicated to shaping the workforce of tomorrow. Charles is very, very renowned for his TED talk on and change making and work in the workplace. Charles is a highly sought after speaker and a teacher who empowers his audiences to bridge generational gaps and cultivate a culture of collaboration. So it is my pleasure this evening to bring to you Charles Ume. So over to you, Mr. Charles. You have the floor now.
Thanks, Ife. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So the good thing about an online class is that when you're done with the class continues. So but it's good having to spend this evening with every one of us. So for the next 1 hour, it will be my pleasure to share knowledge with everyone. So, but before we start, I will ask of two things. I always love to, this would not be a one, it wouldn't be Charles teaching, it will be more be co-creative class. Co-creative in the sense that we would want to, there'll be times to ask questions. I would have even preferred if we did less of the slides and have more questions, because at the end of the day, the idea for the best learning chat go to asking questions that pertain this topic. So for the next less than an hour, we'll be able to look at the slides. And like I said, feel free to ask questions when it's time. Okay. So, but before we start, I need to be sure those here are not sleeping. So if you're here, either I see your thumbs or let me know I'm talking to human beings. At least I know that participants here. So give a thumbs in the chat button for us to know that you're not sleeping or you're listening.
Sir.
Yeah.
That's painting.
So you could also help us mute your just use the chat button. Use the chat button to signify that you're around. Chat button. Thumbs up. I'm here. I'm here for the class. I can hear you. If you people don't give me a sign, I won't start the class. At least I'll know that I'm talking to a human being. Okay. Okay. Two chat. I can hear you. Okay, that's from Austin. Awesome. Nice. Okay. Good. Okay. So at least I'm sure we have people awake, they're not sleeping. So this is the simple goal for this class. Help you understand what you bring to the table. Now the topic is an interesting topic for me. For the past, I was when I was talking to a double for this for each for this class. The funny thing was that I looked at the last slide I did on this, and it was 4 years ago. And the funny thing about information there 4 years ago was that everything had completely changed. And as funny as it is, we're in 2024. In 2020, when the conversation about generations in the workplace was Greek to some of us, um, I kept telling people that this change is going to, that we're still going to see more of this change. And thanks to COVID, it got clearer the effect of those generations in our own workplace. So, for the goal of this class, the simple goal is help you understand who you are on a team and what you bring to the table, and help you see how what your team wants and expects of you. Okay. So next slide. Um, what do we want to achieve with this session? Very simple. Figure out who we are and what works for us in a multi-generational workforce. So clearly, we have 5 generations in the workplace. Five generations as at 2024. Before we start, I would love to know, just ask simple questions. So this one you people must answer. Um, how many do we have Gen Zs here? If you have Gen Zs here, please could we just see, could you let us know? Yeah. Do we have Gen Zs? Okay. Do we have millennials? Do we have
Yes, I'm a
millennials in the
millennial.
class? Don't worry, I'll
Yes, we are
explain.
here.
Okay, interesting. We have millennials. Do we have Gen X in the class? Okay, no Gen X. Do we have the boomers and the traditional generation? Okay, interesting. So clearly, from this conversation, it's obvious that we have mainly millennials and maybe some Gen Zs, maybe. Okay, so the next question is simple. What's the makeup of your team? So if your team is made up of Gen Z and Gen Y, that's Gen Z and millennial, could you raise up your hands or let's say your voice? If the makeup of your team is Gen Z and millennial, that's Gen Y, could we see your hands up? The makeup of your team at work, not here. Okay. So what I'm asking is, if your team is made up of millennials and Gen Zs, could we see just show by saying showing thumbs up or saying yes? Okay. If your team is made up of Gen Zs, millennials, and Gen X, could we show sign by just responding, saying hi, saying showing thumbs up on the chat box? Okay. Okay. Nice, Deborah. Okay. If your team is made up of Gen Z, Gen Y, that's millennials, Gen X, and boomers, could we show sign by raising up your hands or just giving a chat on the chat box? That's if you have the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys, the Gen X, and the boomers in your workplace. If your team has the 4 generation in the workplace. Okay. So what teams are your team made up of? So if you have the 5 generations in your office, that's you have the Gen Zs, you have the millennials, you have the Gen X, and you have the silent generation, that's the traditional generation. If you have the five generations at work, could you just show sign by just letting us know if you have the five generations? So there should be a problem somewhere. It's either you are not telling us the team, what your organization is made up of. Okay. So it's okay if you don't understand what those terms are. That's the reason why we're here. I'll take time to break it down and explain. Then we'll now have a conversation. Okay. So firstly, I talked about the traditional generation. We call them the silent generation. I'll start by trying to break down the five generations in the workplace. I think it will help us understand this better. We call them the traditional, the silent generation. They are normally born before 1945, 1943. Now, the good thing about them is that they have strong ethics about life and work in general, that they're very loyal ones. They are very loyal to company and brands. They brag in their conversations, I have worked with XYZ firm for the past 20 years. As in, their bragging right is always the number of years they've served. And if you listen to them very well, they're the loyal ones, as in, they're the ones that no matter what happens, they don't leave. Companies know them that they are loyal, and that's the hallmark and their biggest strength. Now, they are mostly one of their challenges is that they are mostly slow in adapting to new technologies while dealing with them. They love to be respected and are more open to things that have worked for them compared to innovations. Now, with clients like this, you must be very careful about how you throw in innovations if they are clients. If they are team members, they are the ones that when they are talking, you keep hearing things like, this is how we do it. When we did it in 1945, when we did it 5 years ago, because they they understand, they trust what they know. They're not carried away with your razzmatazz of innovation. However, for fear of missing out, they could buy an iPhone, the latest model, but I can bet you that the two things they'll be using those iPhone to do is just to send, make phone call and send text message. The idea is that the idea for them is they don't want to also miss out on things, but they are the traditional generation or the silent generation. Okay, so that's the first one. We have the boomers. We call them the boomers. They are born between they are between 1944 and 1964. Now it varies sometimes, but this timeline is what we know them for. They are typically career oriented. They have a processed mind, and they have that processed mind kind of tribe. They would prefer your phone calls and your one-on-one interaction the same as silent generation work, compared to bombarding them with codes. They'll prefer you calling them or having one-on-one message. They're not the kind of people you bombard with emails most of the times. Now, they're the ones that will tell you um, when culture says in your organization, um, call everybody on their first. Don't make the mistake of calling them Charles. If they are in this category, even if they tell you we are trying to be normal, don't fall into that trap. Call them Mr. Charles, Mr. Akin, because to them, as funny as it is, it's what they hold on to. That's who they are. And from the generation they are coming from. Don't forget that if you're very honest with yourself, you find out that you might fall into the category of one of their sons. Because at the end of the day, it's like calling your own father. And for Africa, Africa is a place where no matter how growing we are, there are some things we hold on to culture. For this kind of people, don't get carried away with not respecting them. They love the respect. They crave respect. In business and selling to them, you can easily target them using newspapers and television compared to, they're not the kind of people, forget email, forget all those new innovations. However, you can't, and if we're very truthful, people still buy newspapers. There's a reason why the Nigerian politician would still advertise on the newspaper, because it's a target audience that will still want to see a newspaper. However, for the other generation, I can count the number of times most of us have seen newspapers or even read them. But for them, this is who they are. These are the things that made their own world amazing. Okay. So we figured out that they could still love to buy iPhones, okay, at the end of the day, and they want to catch up on the fear of missing out. Now there's a third generation. We call them the Generation X. They were born between 1965 and 1979. Now, this generation, they were they were born before they were born after the baby boomers. Now, they were born post World War II. Now, if you remember vividly, um, there's something called the reason why we call them baby boomers is that there was a boom in an era, and these names are coming from America. They are the ones that we model this name from. Now there was a period after World War II where America practiced isolationism, that they were not going to get involved in the world, which made America finally not get involved in the world wars and come out becoming the savior of the world in global politics. Now, these people were born after that boom. Now, because they didn't know the name to call them, they call them Generation X. X is unknown. The reason why we call them X is unknown because they were after the boomers. Now, it's looking back at culture and looking back at where they stand, they are the ones in between the evolving world of industrialization, of the knowledge economy. They're the ones before the so-called millennials. So these generations are mainly middle. They they've seen two worlds, so they are like the middle child. The middle child in the family is always the neutral one because they know the first and second if they are five, and they know the last, as in they know how to meet the two generations. They are not left out. They can be unknown. They can get into a workplace and you don't hear about them. They're always a neutral one. So, but in the workplace, they have these personalities. They're not the personalities, they are very imposing. They know how to fit into your new generation. They know how to fit into the boomer generation. Then we have the generation Y. We call them the generation Y. They're also the millennials. They are more driven by impact. They are the kind of ones that, in their president in quote is Mark Zuckerberg. They're the ones that if you're employing them, the best way to give them the job is not to tell them, is to tie what you're doing into, tell them why, as in connect to their why, connect to what makes them alive. They figured out that they might not be a Mark Zuckerberg tomorrow. However, if they are working with you, they want to be sure that the work they're doing with you is also impact driven. So for people like this, they might not be moved completely with your money, but with perks, give them good perks, but tie their job description onto what with impact, and that way you get them very well. Okay, so in the workplace, they wish to be now very interesting. They wish to be coached and they need and they feed as in don't joke with a millennial, you don't give feedback, you're playing with it. As in they love being coached, they love being mentored, and they love feedback. Now, um, they are more collaborative in nature. Of all the generations from in history, millennials are more collaborative in nature and are driven more by a just cause. They are born in an era when instant gratification is the order of the day. They were born in an era where we had everything fast and they were getting used to adapting to technology. So this is the profile of who they are. This is the profile of who you are, and this is what helps all of us understand how we fit into the workplace. So we have the Gen Zs. We are called the swipe generation. They call them swipe because they would spend less time on their phones before they swipe. They have shorter attention span, and this affects everything in their own work. They all live on the digital streets. Now, millennials are not natives. Gen Zs are pure digital natives. We call them digital natives because everything about them is their phone. And what the worst thing that happened to Gen Zs was COVID, because what happened after COVID was that the world now decided to embrace remote work. With remote work, it showed Gen Zs the power of technology. Most of them didn't need to go to your workplace. They needed to work from home. Forgetting that at the end of the day, we had four generations that have been working from their offices and a new generation that is coming into the workplace in a world that is a post-COVID era that is telling you stay at home. The challenge with them is that they get paid working from home. They don't understand because they get the job done. They don't understand why they should come to your office and stay in your office. And because they understand that they do the job, they ask you, let's get the job done. And remembering that this is who they are, let's not forget there were four generations before them, that this is not the life that, this is not what makes sense to them. for a generation like this, you have to understand how they think and the psychology around them. Okay. So now, simple question. What works for your team? Now, for most of the team, most of you in the team, the big question I want to ask you, and this is the main conversation where most of us will have to talk. I'll stop talking here for a while. Now, what is your team made up of? And how does the personality of the generations you have in work reflect in your workplace? Okay. So it's time for you guys to talk. Millennials, Gen Z, since we have more millennials, how does your personality reflect in the workplace? And from a HR perspective, from whichever, and yes, it will make sense for you to, while having this conversation, tell us your role in the workplace and how how who you are at work reflects and what people like you do in the work, so that it helps us understand you. So what works for your team more? How do the Gen Zs, the millennials, these categories that were brought out, how do they reflect in your workplace? You guys will have to talk. Oh. Charles has finished talking.
Okay, Charles, I think you can call people out.
So I'm trying, I don't know everybody, so that's why, okay, interest, okay. So there's a Toby, there's an Aziz, there's a Dave, there's a Deborah, there's an Esther, there's an Ijoma, there's a Tony, there's Paul. So before I call you out, it's better you guys call yourselves out. So who goes first? Because everyone will have to talk. So let's start with Aziz. Aziz, what generation do you fall into? Aziz Ogundiro. Okay. Aziz has refused to speak. Ijoma, Edobo. Let's hear you. Were you
Okay,
just expecting Charles to just talk? If you
okay,
don't
I
talk,
would want to. I would love to speak, but it's just that my background, a bit of distractions from my background. So I
okay.
don't know if everyone can hear me.
We can hear you very well, clearly.
Okay, I'm Augustine by name.
Okay.
I'm a sales professional.
Okay.
Okay, I am a millennial, and of course, my team comprises of both Gen Zs and millennial. So
Okay.
for me, basically, it's of course I work with my team and we collaborate. Okay,
Okay.
and of course, it's really very important that we come with that I come with innovation. Okay, that will help my team to achieve their target. And just like what you mentioned, okay, concerning your description of who the Gen Zs are, because more of the team comprise more of the team. Well, it's like 50-50 for me between Gen Zs and millennia in my team. So basically, it's a collaborative leadership style for me. You know, innovative, transformative leadership style where everybody has the opportunity, to contribute, to make suggestions, and of course, people are at liberty to come up with their own idea on how they feel they can best achieve their respective targets. So basically, it's a collaborative style, of achieving our numbers. So thank you.
So which generation do you normally have problems with the Gen Zs at work? do you normally have problems? Which generation do you normally have problems with?
Yeah, for me, basically, it's the Gen Z, okay? Because at some point you need to, you need to provide that support. Okay, you need to encourage them because sometimes the target might be overwhelming for the Gen Zs in my team. Okay, so sometimes I work with them, spend some time with them in the field and ensure that those challenges are being surmounted. So basically, it's the Gen Zs are like, most of them are like trying to be familiar with what the job entails. But for the millennial, they have garnered experience over time and not much of a challenge, working with them.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for this thought. I think this helps. Any other person who wants to share? Some of you can be quiet. We need three more people to share.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
All right. This is Ijoma. I work in HR, and of course, by virtue of my role, it is a responsibility that I have on my shoulders to ensure that all the generations at work are able to combine resources effectively and are able to collaborate towards the objective of the business, right? Well, I wouldn't want to be unfair to any generation.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to be very upfront in accusing any generation of being the ones because it can cut across. So I've come to see from personal experience that it is not just about the name that we give to or the tag that we give to a particular generation. We have different kinds of people, right? But ensuring that everybody is able to cooperate, everybody is able to do his bit, because the organization is like is a process or a system, and everybody really has to contribute, irrespective of your age, irrespective of your role. You really have to. So that is what we do, trying to synergize everybody. So in that respect, I would say that we've seen people who are not Gen Zs, becoming difficult. We've also seen excellent behavior and cooperation from people who are Gen Zs. So perhaps because of, the role that I play in the business, I tend to see or work towards everybody, being able to cooperate. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, Jama. Any other question? Any other person?
Okay, I had been waiting for the rest of the house to contribute before I throw in my comments as well. So, my name is Lua Shaulu, and I work in HR as well. I work across the different generations of the workforce. I have the Gen Zs, I have the millennials, and I have some of the baby boomers as well on my team. And like Ijoma rightly said, it would just be unfair to say everybody brings their unique quota to the team. Everybody brings their contribution to the team, and they all work differently, right? But of course, like the example you said of a baby boomer, you're saying that you want to have the workforce, we're on a first name basis. We don't want anybody there's no mister in our workplace. But the undertone is still there. That even though you call me by my name, you call me Charles, but I know that this thing, if you come outside the office, is not what it so that's always still there. But at the same time, well, we all manage to synergize. I think from the lens of my role as HR is just looking at it to ensure that everybody is able to pull their weight on their different teams, when it's necessary. So yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Ife. Do we have any other feedback before I share? Okay. So I love the fact that at least having two HR speak, don't worry, we don't have any police here to come after you people. I think my own concern is the idea of understanding clearly. For instance, in the workplace, we have more of there's so much of complaints about of a generation of a Gen Z and maybe how they react. However, if you listen very well, I was trying to take us on a journey on how the interesting thing about this generation is that they're complete native. They are natives. They are of the four generations. We were living in a world where, prior to COVID, millennials were asking for working from home, and I could remember specifically, 7 years ago. I hosted a TV show called Breaking the Coconut Show. While having that show, then I had a HR that came, and the argument then specifically was how, most employers were not giving their staff, millennials, opportunity to work from home. And the argument was, why are you, these people can't deliver. Now, as millennials were still lobbying for that, life happened, COVID happened. And when COVID happened, we were more like, we didn't care whether we were working from home because we had stayed so much at home. We now understood that what we needed at that point in time was results. And forgetting that every year we switch on out graduates from the university, we still have out graduates to the workforce. And now we have in the workforce some Gen Zs that have never worked in a full workplace. Most of them do hybrid. Most of them come 2-3 times a week. And for them, the argument I keep having is that these ones don't have culture. These ones have skills. These ones don't have, they're not like you that have done job shadowing and understand what it is to work with people. So irrespective of and whether you like it or not, there's something about job shadowing people. There's some things that are not spoken when you work in a workplace. It's not everything they tell you. Sometimes you use your eyes to see it. For people like this, they've not experienced, not all of them, and like most of us know, we're not trying to box them in a corner, but for the fact that not all of them would have experienced what work is like, the tendency for them to not have the kind of grit, tenacity the other generations have will always come in. So most times it's good to understand where the problem is and know people better. That way, as a lead, it helps you look at it not as a problem, but as a blind spot that could be helped. So most times, the question is, how are HRs integrating these new ones that are skilled technically? They are very skilled. They will get, if it's using software, they will do everything for you. However, we all learned that during COVID, that the biggest miracle COVID taught us was that you don't need technical skills to win. So there was a report about how Coca-Cola, for instance, I don't know if you've heard of that. I think some Coca-Cola had some of their team members, that was Global Coca-Cola Company. They figured out that most of the team members that were very, most of the teams that were very lively during COVID were not from the top. They were from the middle. There were people going back to their colleagues and asking them, we didn't see you on Teams meeting. What happened? And it was the middle team leaders that were able to drag the team compared to the leaders. What most of the leaders were doing during COVID was, you didn't come online. Why didn't you come online? Don't you know that you can't be taking care of your family and taking care of work? Because at that point in time, what they understood was they were fighting for their head. They were like timelines. But the team members that were like, it's unusual for Ife not to be online by this time. Maybe I should go to Ife. Let me call Ife after this meeting. They were the ones that finally dragged people, that kept people's momentum. So the report was that they now figured out that the best way to groom leaders is to look for those ones that have the ears of everybody on the team. Those ones that have influence, but that might not be your top leaders. And what those ones had that stood everybody out was that they had empathy. They were the ones that had emotional intelligence. They were the ones that went to go and call people that were not coming. And that is not, that doesn't make their leader a lesser of what it is, but it just means that the skill set that is needed for this new workplace that we're evolving in is not completely technical. It has to do with, you have to think people are struggling with everything, and your ability to have your ears on the ground for your team and ask your team questions, irrespective of the generation, is also one that would stand you out. Okay, so I came up with some things I think we should try as team leads. So clearly, this is what has worked. I'm not saying this is like I'm not saying this is final, but this is what have worked, and you could also try. Now, reverse mentorship. Bring in team members who are of the silent generation and baby boomers on your team building meetings. So most of the times, when we plan for team building meetings and retreat, we always think is about, yes, we do it most times. I think I had to cut my niche and said, I figured out that the biggest niche I had was not, I understood Gen Z's millennials. So I cut my niche to, if I was doing an in-house trainings, these are the people I was going to work with. But the twist to it was that I always asked, do we have a boomer or do we have somebody on the board that we can call? And what we want that person to do is to just come to the team and sit down and talk and tell us about the stories about what work was for them. Now, the beautiful part about having people like this doing your team training is that you don't, as in, there's some knowledge that are caught in stories that you don't even, that you need your team to have, that your trainer would have not seen. So bringing in most of them, there might be people on your board, there might be professionals that have retired, but bring them in after your training, let them have fireside chat. Let the team ask them questions, what it was for them. That way we are doing two things. We're making sure that the knowledge is not completely going to the grave with them, that the knowledge is shared with next generation, and people are able to ask them questions without, and then they also feel a sense of belonging. And if they are external consultants for you, there's so much of you can get from their years of experience. And I say, make sure you make it rewarding for them, so that it's not seen as just your one-off. They have strong ethics. The next generation are not big on it because they don't see, it doesn't make so much of sense. But to them, they understand what ethics is, and most of them have legacy to protect. So bring them in your team trainings. Now, for millennials and Gen X, do more leadership trainings. I always ask, for instance, what's the continuous learning plan for every team member? Now, we've seen that in the new workplace, or the continuous changing workplace, that it's not remote work and hybrid work that is the problem, is that there'll be constant changes in everything about your team members, and it's easy for your team members to leave tomorrow. And most times it's not that they leave because, yes, the money, several things, but I feel strongly that one of the benchmark of a strong HR, and this is not to indict HR, one of the benchmark of very strong HR is that they know when the team member will resign. As in, it's important. If you don't know, as funny as it is, then you don't understand what the job is. When people come into your office and they want to look for a job, as simple as having conversations about the plans, people hide some things, and there are some people that will hide. However, your ability to be able to know that you're having conversations with them, where do you want to be? What is having hard conversations with people that you want to bring into the workforce. You will be the one to know that this person said they want to spend XYZ number of years. This person wants to do XYZ. You should be the one that is pushing them. You said you will leave in 2 years, in 3 years. So what's keeping you? Then your ability to know, have people's plan. If I have the plan of your life where you've told me, I won't be shocked. And I help you, and I want to grow in XYZ areas of my life. And you're not just asking questions for information. You're asking because you're having a file for people, and you have your own way of, and like I said, if you have millennials and Gen Zs as a HR, you have two works. You have to be their coach and mentor. That way, they tell you things before things happen about their own life. So I'm of the opinion that you should also practice this with them. Have a continuous learning plan for them. Contribute to them. Let's forget the fact that people find jobs tomorrow, but at the end of the day, if we're truthful, people still go out, and it's a very small circle. You don't go too far. But your ability to be HR that also helping improve people's values, so that it's a crime when people work under you tomorrow and somebody calls and says, but you said this person worked with you. How come they don't know how to work to use Microsoft Word? It's an indictment of you, because the fact is that if people have worked under you, you should be able to have helped their own growth to a particular level let's forget the fact that we have people that are not that don't want to help themselves, but to an extent, you should be able to help them grow. And for this generation, millennials and Gen Z, for those that contribute to them, they're emotionally attached to them. Remember, I told you that, for instance, millennials are more they're asking the why questions compared to they want to be part of something, but don't just make them feel stupid at the end of the day. So then for the Gen Zs, now the interesting thing about the Gen Zs, like I tried explaining, is I'm not saying this is what works, but from experience, Gen Zs are smarter than you because they know things, they listen to, they hear more than you even think you know because they're exposed to information. Now they are very assertive. They're not the ones that would, they don't know how to they don't know how to tone down, in quotes, tone down the new information they have. However, from experience and from research and from everybody that most of the people I've worked with, they look at you more. If you say something and you do it, they respect you more when you do what you say. But the moment you stop being honorable, they'll be the first ones to go on Twitter and tell the world how irresponsible you are. Let's not forget that for most of this interesting generation, they have nothing to lose. They will always get a job tomorrow. They've not worked for, as in, it's technology. They will always apply and they will always get, the world needs them more. However, we're also learning that apart from the fact that they are skilled technically, most organizations are now beginning to ask more questions compared to technical skills. Now, they don't know how to have conversations. Now, they don't know how to confront, for instance, they want a raise. Boss, a typical conversation about a raise goes like this. Mr. XYZ, I have done XYZ from this year to this year, and we've gotten this profit. I feel my salary should be increased. What do you think I should do for the next XYZ number of months for this to come to pass? A Gen Z will tell you that.
Of their country. Why everywhere it
A Gen Z
is
will go on Twitter and tell the world that they've worked with you for and they've seen how much you make in your company, but you pay your staff less. As in they because they can't, I'm forgetting that maybe if they had that conversation with you, you would have said, okay, I hear you, we'll think about it. But because they don't know how to, they don't have that communication skill. So when you're doing trainings for them, it's not normal trainings. You do trainings on how to have conversation, how to listen, how to be expressive. Because to a generation like this, the human connection is the missing link, and it's everywhere around. It's the conversation everywhere around the world. They can easily send that. It's like it's send email, Abby, send email. It's phone call, Abby, as in they are so instant. They've not learned so much about engaging and putting an interesting argument without making the next person. So in your trainings, these are the kind of soft human trainings that you should focus on because that's what makes these intelligent people more useful. Okay. So let me not talk too much. I think I've done. Like I said, this is what you should try. This is like, it's not that this is would always work, but this is adding to all you have known. Okay. So it's time for questions. It's time for Charles to keep quiet and listen to your questions before we call it today.
Thank you so much, Charles. Okay. Please, if you have any questions, you've heard Charles speak. He has poured his heart out to us. If you have any questions, please use the chat box, raise up your hand, and on me to speak. Anyone you want. But maybe I should throw in the first question, Charles.
Okay.
Now, I know you have mentioned a lot of things. Okay, you've mentioned a lot of things that we can try, for the different generations. But in terms of productivity now, how especially for the Gen Zs, we already know their attention span is short, they're the swipe generation and all of that. So how do you ensure that you get the best out of these Gen Zs. A lot of them want to work from home, and working from home, they have the darnest excuses for not turning up sometimes, for not showing up sometimes. So how do you actually manage them?
Okay. So I was expecting this question. So what one that has worked up till now, one of the plans I know that has worked up till now still remains that um you don't employ a Gen Z like you employ every other generation. Let me explain. A Gen Z is the kind of employee that when you're getting from day one, you're having conversations of consequences. And it's not, it has worked. It will work again tomorrow. Now, most of the times, it's true that they could give crazy excuses. And when it becomes a pattern, like I said, I'm specific about them. The challenge most times is that we don't follow, we treat them, they are special kids. They are special kids. You treat them in isolation until they prove better, and until they have to prove themselves, meaning you have to start with consequences. Why it's like this, it's not because it doesn't make them bad. It's simply that they understand consequences better. Don't tell a Gen Z, as in tell a Gen Z what will happen. You should agree what will happen. Don't do X, Y, Z. It shouldn't be I will. It's not a threat. It's like, yeah, we have to agree. If we do this, we get this. And don't make that agreement in secret. It should be very open. Then don't they are smart people, like I said. However, the weakness about smartness is that no matter how smart you are, one of the biggest skills for anybody is if you don't have people's skills, your smartness, you would after a while you will lose your smart. People will see that you will see that smartness is the least of skill set you need to thrive in a workplace. Now, most times because we don't deal with them with consequences, they get away with something. And I'm not saying this because it has happened. It will happen tomorrow again. Consequences in saying, not you. You co-create the consequences and make them make it open when they start misbehaving. At a stage, they hate being embarrassed. They are smart people. They hate being embarrassed on their as in they like to prove people wrong. So make them agree to what you whatever the consequences in. And like I said, don't employ Gen Zs in isolation. I understand very well and the next conversation I'm maybe going to have is that Gen Z is a mindset. We have some amazing millennials that have the Gen Z mindset. However, for the newest generation, for those that make excuses and call themselves, they're like the sports kids in quotes. But for every sports kids in quotes, if you look closely, there is they're not completely bad. You've not just made it hard. There's a strict person that works with them and gets the best of them. So I'm saying it's harder for HR because for that Gen Z that might give you problem, he might be the one that is getting the best result for you in your own team. But that is his own weakness. So it's a management thing. You must, like I said, you would be coach and mentor to them. That's one way to drag them and create consequences. Consequences has worked from the teams we've worked with, and consequences of not hidden consequences. Everybody knows this is the reason why we are going to sack him. So if he goes to Twitter and tell them how we sacked him, people will laugh at him. Don't joke with journalists in isolation. Your hand must be clean too if you're coming. Else you'll be the one that will be made a laughing stock of. So they are the generation that made every one of us sit up in the workplace because for the ones that are smart, then for the ones that are not smart, they just they need you to also be firm on some things and have consequences. That's what has worked for a while. Yeah. Okay, do we have any other question?
All right, thank you very much for
concern.
that. Okay. So rest of the house, let's bring in our questions. Or if you have any contributions, I'm going to call call out Esther now to jump in on this conversation. Esther, if you're in a place to talk, please. Would like to hear your voice. Toby, Tony, Kingsley, let's hear you. Contribute to the conversation. Okay. Well, while they are booting, there is a second question I would also like to ask.
Okay.
Yeah. So talking about, I'm still going to be speaking about, I think this is rubbing off not just on the Gen Zs, but also on the millennials, of which, we are one of them.
Yeah.
Now that there is a lot of talk about, our mental health and how it affects work, no longer work-life balance, but now work-life integration and the whole, that whole movement.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of from my experience anyway, there has been a lot of my mental health is being affected. I cannot tolerate this. I can't bear this. I can't bear that. And then it has now become a lot of the managers now who are the the baby boomers and then the older generations. They now feel like they have to work on eggshells around us.
Yeah.
Because not just the Gen Zs, even the millennials, they feel like they have to work on eggshells around us. I know you had said that for their own generation, it should be reverse mentoring now. But at the same time, because from my experience, like I said, I have a boss who just feels like, let's just leave these people. As long as they do the most important things, then we'll deal with the rest. But I can't keep following up with somebody. And if you fire them now, the next thing you hear is that they'll go on Twitter and say bad bosses, bad bosses. And when that thing trended, then bad bosses. So how do apart from just reverse mentoring them and hoping that it will change, literally pouring yourself out into us, the millennials, and also the Gen Zs, what more can we do for the older generation, that is the people in the Gen X and then the baby boomers, for them to still feel like so that we're not completely throwing them out of our workforce?
So so for reverse mentoring, when you ask them to come, so what normally works is, for when one person gives, they feel important, right? So in the beginning, what some organizations did then was that because the complaint for baby boomers and traditional generation is always they find it difficult to use most of your tools, your tech tools. So what they did, some offices did, some organizations did, was they brought they made the smarter young ones who were good in tech. They paired them with the boomers. When the boomers were done sharing, so it was more like they both saw. It was interestingly showing that I can help you with this, and you can help me with this. The reason being that they figured out that when someone else contributes, if I call something co-creative, co-created, um, I don't take the glory of making it. However, when there's something I've given, I also now subconsciously understand that there's also a lack I have, and somebody else is also helping me. So the idea was there were several smart things the younger ones knew how to do, but they gave them that role to they paired them with an older person, while the older person was mentally they were going to shadow the next person. What it did was that everybody felt they were contributing. Now, I know it might not be like that in the Nigerian workplace. However, I have a concern. I have more concern about, for instance, the integration of. I have a strong feeling, and this might be, and I want you to think about it. I have a strong feeling that most millennials, in quotes, most millennials, for most of the challenge I've got from millennial leaders now, is that most millennial leaders were not formally trained about how to lead. And I'll explain. most millennial leaders assumed leadership. So there's a gap when you assume leadership, because you now understand that your classmates or your friend is now on your team and they don't respect you because they feel, is this not Ife? But Ife has KPIs and you're stopping Ife's KPIs. And Ife doesn't understand how her friend doesn't understand that these KPIs will sack me. But the friend is like, who am I for Ife? So most of the challenges I had was having more millennial leaders having problem with leading their, in quotes, mates or colleague, because they felt they were the same. And I now told them, is this the problem you're having? The problem, so there has to be, and millennials don't and it took me getting out of the box to understand that because we assume so much of leadership, there is still the someone said if you don't learn how to you still have to go and learn ABCD. As funny as learning the alphabet is and learning how to read dictionaries at a particular stage, if you're honest with yourself, the vocabularies you have, your vocabulary reduces when you stop reading. So the more we expose our millennial leaders to leadership, not this person is smart, give them leadership. No, they have to, and they have to job shadow under strict boomers or Gen X's. So it's the gap in the millennial leadership that we're not even talking about. That I think for me, I've learned, as in most of the clients I'm having and the challenges I'm having with most leaders that are millennials, it's simply that they don't understand how to say as simple as they don't know how to say no. They don't know how to be firm, and they don't know how to be assertive where they are meant to, because they assumed leadership. So they assumed it because they were like, they looked at them and they looked good. So I'm like, there's so much of retraining that has to go on with millennial leaders. My perspective, it helps them, and trust me, boomers are the best people that, you see those hard, difficult people, that are the best people to help reframe your head and show you how it is. So there's when it comes to that role, I hope this helps so I don't spend so much time. It's 7 o'clock. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Charles. I think you highlighted a very, very key issue there, which is that a lot of millennials just assumed leadership. They were not trained for leadership. And some people that are not even very development do not even still see the importance of getting the appropriate leadership training, and then this can cause a lot of friction in the workplace. So I'm going to just throw it open back to the house again and see if anybody has any additional questions, comments before we call it a wrap for today in 2 minutes, because it's already 8:01 and this is supposed to be a 1 hour session. It's supposed to be a 1 hour session. Okay. You can use the chat box. You can unmute your mic and speak if you want to. Okay. So I don't think we have any additional comments or questions to this. So I want to thank you very much, Charles Umi, for really taking the time to speak with us today. I've learned a lot. I knew some things years before this session started about the different generations in the workplace. I must say that you have really broken the coconuts today. You shattered, you really clarified a lot of things for us today. And on behalf of all of us at the Hacking Performance Africa Network, I want to appreciate you for your time. And if there's anybody joining us for the first time, you just got the link and you want to know where this is coming from, the platform is Hacking Performance Africa, and we are all about growth and impact. I will drop the link to join our WhatsApp group, where you would have the opportunity to have access to this kind of webinar and even much more learning sessions. So, Toby, could you assist me with that? Just drop the link in the chat box. Toby. Okay. The links to the session will be dropped in the chat box. So thank you very much, Charles Umi, and thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time out to join us on this learning session today. Do have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice